This video is brought to you by me. For $1 a month, you can support the channel directly and help me keep doing what I love. Thanks for watching and supporting. Rage is a weird beast of a game. It's one of my earliest examples of a game getting built up for years before the greater public ever gets a chance to put the disc in their consoles. I was one of the early people who saw Rage when it was first announced. Our story starts in 2007 at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. Rage was a part of Apple's yearly cycle of lying to themselves about people giving a shit about gaming on Mac. During the keynote, the first vertical slice of the game was shown by John Carmack as a tech demo to show off the new id Tech 5 engine, a game engine that was going to be used for the company's games going forward. Rage hadn't even been given a name yet, and according to Carmack, the preview was thrown together in around just a dozen days. I was just getting into tech and computers at the time, and wwdc was one of the major conferences I used to tune into every year, but more information started trickling out about Rage as it started to enter the media cycle. That same year at QuakeCon, the game was officially announced to be a new IP at id, and it would be a post-apocalyptic action and driving game. And it was going to be massive. Uncompressed, the game was allegedly a terabyte in size, and that was pretty huge in the early 2010s. It would be a 2-disc release for PC, Mac, and 360, and take an entire Blu-ray disc on PS3. But with that ambition came a long development cycle. Despite the WWDC 2007 announcement, Rage wouldn't release until 2011, with the Mac version shockingly released months later in February of 2012. But in spite of that dev time, Rage stayed in the spotlight. It got a good amount of play in Breaking Bad, Jesse has seen multiple times playing it on his massive TV, and the game got a semi-demo released on iPhone called Mutant Bash TV, an on-rails shooter sharing the name of the in-universe TV show, despite no television sets appearing in the game even once. It used the accelerometer to aim your weapon, and it was later re-released as Rage HD for newer iPhones and iPad. There was even a string of comics and a novel written about the universe. And lastly, it won a good amount of E3 2010 awards, including Game of the Show from 2 publications as it proceeded through its final year of development. Things were really rolling for the game, but once it was released, Rage kind of came and went. So what happened to it? Rage came out to some solid reviews. Across the board, it got 7s and 8s, and it was generally regarded as good. Not great, but good. But it didn't explode onto the scene like everyone had hoped, and now that I've played it, I think I understand why it came and went the way it did. Wait, there was a sequel? What? Rage lies in the intersection of Doom, Fallout, Borderlands, and Mad Max. It's a light looter shooter with some mild car combat thrown in for flavor that takes place in a post-asteroid Earth where mutants run free and factions are vying for power and land. Rage puts the player in the center of the power struggle as they go from town to town completing odd jobs, and at a certain point you feel less like a protagonist and more like an errand boy with a gun. What's that, Lassie? Mutants are poisoning the well and we have to fix it or little Timmy's gonna die? Missions, a word I use lightly, can last a minute or half an hour. The shortest tasks involve doing the fetch quest thing of delivering an item to someone so they can relay some information to you so that you can go back to the original person and give them that info. This is where most of the driving comes in. The vehicular aspect was a big selling point. It's one of the 3 features on the back of the box. But in practice, it's completely bland. It's functional, it works, and I prefer the driving control scheme to Borderlands dual stick driving, but for a pillar feature, it's really uninspired. Vehicles have a serious lack of any real suspension, and for a wasteland full of mud and dirt, there is really no slippery physics like you would expect. It's uncannily unsatisfying, and frankly, it does nothing for me. In the grander world of Rage, driving your car through the wasteland is supposed to be tense as you avoid turrets and other factions targeting you in their own cars as they try to scrap you. Car combat is relegated to waiting until you lock onto an enemy and then firing your machine guns or rockets, but you can't ever take manual aim, so you just have to wait for the game to tell you when to shoot. Clearing out turrets and other cars is pointless because every time you come back into the wasteland, they respawn. You might as well ignore them unless you need to make some extra money. You'll be paid for clearing them out, but every time you do, the required number increases, meaning more and more enemies appear where you're trying to go. While I was driving from a city to the waypoint on my minimap, something kept bothering me. When I finally figured out what it was, the entire concept of the open wasteland completely caved in on itself. There is no world map. I have no sense of scale of how large or small everything is, and when I wanted to go back to an area I had been before to stock up on ammo, I had no idea where to go. The minimap exclusively points to your next mission and only to your next mission. You have no reason to explore. In fact, by following this path that is clearly a jump, it led to a dead end. Why even put this here? Having an entire map with distinct areas might have made the open world distinct enough to navigate through without needing a map. If different areas stuck out, you could find your way. But Rage suffers from that PS3 and Xbox 360 era where everything is using the color palette I like to call fecal smear. The world just melts together and makes it impossible to explore. There are no landmarks or distinct features in different regions, so driving around isn't at all exciting. There is one other aspect to the driving, and that is the raceways in 2 of the 3 towns. You compete in time trials and races in order to earn certificates that you can trade for car parts and upgrades. I did a few races, including the ones that were required for progression, and they are slightly more compelling than driving through the wasteland, but since I found the driving mechanics so mediocre in themselves, I didn't really care that much more for racing. It just didn't feel particularly good. So at this point, half of what Rage was supposed to do, well, it's not so great. The open world isn't that open, the awesome driving isn't so awesome. But id isn't known as a racing game company. They are known for Doom, Quake, and Wolfenstein 3D. Good first-person action can save this game. I'm also mixed on the gunplay. It feels, even by 2010 standards, dated in structure. The major set-piece missions take place in narrowly crafted linear levels where you enter through the front door of a stronghold and fight your way through whatever faction to get to the back door. Then you grab the glowing object you came here for and exit stage left. There is one level that stuck out to me because, while it felt the same in structure, the areas fought in left breathing room to move around. The Dead City involves running through a bunch of fast but easily slayable mutants, and you finally end up fighting a monster the size of a building with a rocket launcher. Weapons range from shotguns to a crossbow, and you literally get a BFG in case you forgot who made this game. Every weapon can use multiple types of ammo. The pistol, for instance, can use Fat Boys, which convert the gun into a much higher caliber of weapon, and Kill Bursts, which shoots 6 continuous shots one after the other in rapid succession. Obviously, the higher power ammo is more fun, but you reach a point with the base ammo where you just unload onto spongy enemies who refuse to go down. It rapidly goes from fun to grueling. Then you get special ammo, and it's fun again for a few minutes, and the cycle repeats. In the pursuit of making special ammo more sought after, they broke the feel of guns when you just have standard bullets, which isn't what you want in a first-person shooter. Ironically, the boss fights are the easiest part of the game. Since you only have to focus on one enemy, you can mow them down with whatever weapon. They posed no challenge. I expected at least one to get to me, but they never did. That isn't to say it doesn't do anything right. One weapon that was pushed heavily in marketing was the wing stick, a boomerang of death. These things are a blast. I could play an entire game based around them. I always bought a ton when I could and crafted more when I found the resources, and then I just let them rip. What I love most is how their use changes in different environments. Outside, they lock onto enemies and heat seek toward them. But if you're in a narrow corridor, they start bouncing off the walls and cause chaos. You never know who they'll hit. While they are the best known item in the game, you also have other weapons like EMPs and grenades. Other weapons are useless outside of the one level designed around them, like the RC car. These are rolling bombs that seem like they would add an extra layer to combat, but they are so slow that enemies easily dispatch them before you can even move behind cover. So the gunplay is better than the driving, but it still leaves me feeling like it could have been balanced better to make normal ammo feel fun to use. If you're wondering why I haven't even mentioned the story, it's because it barely matters. It hardly even exists, and that's not from a lack of voice talent. John Goodman does great besides not having anything to work with.
Good work. I'm starting to think I made a good decision by saving you. You truly are someone we can trust, and I am in your debt.
If you must know, you're a cryogenically frozen former military man who is aboard an Ark, an underground chamber that will unfreeze after the asteroid strike to repopulate Earth and save the human species. Somehow you are the only survivor on your Ark, and you go around and do enough random crap until the Authority and the Resistance take notice. After hearing those names, I was definitely losing hope. Like somehow these placeholders made it into the final game. It reminds me of that Everybody Hates Chris episode where they compare branded items versus generics, and they show this big white package with the word cookie on it in impact font. I first played Rage when it was released. Day 1. I was one of the few, the proud, the Marines who pre-ordered to get the Anarchy Edition, despite there never being a normal non-Anarchy Edition being released. I was there, and you won't take that from me. I was excited for the game, like really excited, but I never finished it. Since then I had kind of forgotten why I never picked it back up, and now I do. When Rage came out, it was a big deal, or at least it felt like it was. And actually playing it, the game falls in the middle of the road. It takes so many cues from other properties that it fails to establish its own strengths. If you ask how it sets itself apart, the answer is, it really doesn't. It's not a bad game, it just does nothing better than other games it draws inspiration from. And that is not what you want with a brand new IP. I found Rage Complete in box for $9.99. It included all the inserts. Turns out, in the manual, there are maps of all 3 towns you visit. That sure would have helped. Still no world map though. Similarly to the first game, I found Rage 2 for an even lower price, $7 at a store near me. I know next to nothing about it, besides Andrew WK's performance before a non-plus crowd at E3 2018. I find it so weird how the series was hyped up for years before it ever debuted, and everyone said a collective, okay, and moved on. Like, it wasn't a situation like with Cyberpunk where it was hyped up and then it was catastrophic on release. It was just fine. And that's what makes it so weird. I have to imagine that Rage cost a pretty penny to make. John Carmack lauded the game for its visuals and uncompressed file size, 1 terabyte if you forgot since the beginning of the video. But I feel a lot of that is lost in translation when the game only runs natively at 720p on console, and it allegedly is even more compressed on 360 to fit on just the 2 discs. On PS3 it had an extraordinary amount of screen tearing. Textures popped in and out like an Unreal Engine game. There are some weird physics bugs which are hilarious, I'm not complaining about those. And the frame rate is all over the place. I wanted to play the PC port, but it's the only game to date I haven't been able to get running on Steam Deck due to graphical rendering issues. I have to wonder if some of this incredible ambition was misplaced. Did you play Rage? What did you think? I can't imagine it is anyone's favorite game, but prove me wrong in the comments. For more videos, subscribe, and if you'd like to support the channel directly, check out my Patreon. I'd like to thank my higher tier patrons, Andrews Donahoe, Elmore and Lang, Kaylee, H. Rogger, BBF and Bloxburg, Benjamin, Just Jessica, Kudo716, and Ted Z. Thanks, and see you in the next one.